The colony ship Meridian had been traveling for 47 years. Inside its metal walls, 12,000 humans slept in frozen pods, dreaming of a new world. They had left Earth behind, hoping to find a better home among the stars. None of them knew they were about to wake up in the middle of a war. Captain Elena Vasquez was one of the few crew members awake during the final approach. She stood on the bridge, watching the stars blur as the ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Her coffee had gone cold hours ago, but she did not notice. After nearly 5 decades of waiting, they had finally arrived at Kepler 442b. But something was wrong. The navigation officer, a young man named Torres, went pale as his screens filled with data. "Captain," he said, his voice shaking, "we have contacts. Hundreds of them." Elena walked to his station and looked at the readings. Her heart dropped into her stomach. 2 massive fleets faced each other across the empty space where the Meridian had just appeared. Warships the size of small cities hung in perfect formation. Weapons that Elena could not even understand were pointed at each other, ready to fire. And now all those weapons were turning toward the Meridian. "Get us out of here," Elena ordered. "I can't," Torres replied. "The FTL drive needs 6 hours to recharge." The communication system crackled to life. A harsh, clicking voice spoke in a language no human had ever heard. Then another voice joined in, this one deeper and more musical. Both sounded angry. Elena took a deep breath. She had trained for first contact scenarios. Every captain did. But no training could prepare anyone for this. "Open a channel to both fleets," she said. "Broadcast on all frequencies." "What do we send?" asked her communications officer. Elena thought for a moment. These aliens did not know humans. They did not know what humanity wanted or feared. They did not know if humans were friends or enemies. Right now, that ignorance was the only advantage the Meridian had. "Send everything," Elena said. "Every language in our database, every song, every piece of art, every historical document. Flood their sensors with so much information that they won't know what to make of us." The officers looked at her like she had lost her mind, but they followed her orders. For the next 3 minutes, the Meridian broadcast the complete cultural history of humanity into space. Shakespeare played alongside K-pop. The Declaration of Independence transmitted next to cooking recipes. Children's lullabies mixed with heavy metal music. It was chaos, pure and beautiful chaos. And it worked. Both alien fleets hesitated. Their weapons stayed powered but did not fire. The strange, noisy little ship had confused them completely. Was it a weapon? A trick? A message they could not decode? Elena used those precious seconds to run. The Meridian's engines were not designed for combat, but she pushed them beyond their limits. The ship groaned and shook as it fled toward the nearest moon, a gray rock that sensors showed was uninhabited. The landing was not gentle. The Meridian came down hard, tearing through rock and ice. Metal screamed as the hull cracked. Emergency systems activated, waking the sleeping colonists with alarms and flashing lights. When the dust settled, Elena stood in the broken bridge and looked at the damage. Half the ship was buried in the moon's surface. The engines were dead. They were stranded, but they were alive. Over the next few weeks, the colonists emerged from their pods and learned the truth about their situation. They had not found an empty galaxy waiting for them. Instead, they had stumbled into a Cold War that had lasted 8,000 years. Marcus Chen, the colony's head of security, gathered what intelligence he could. The 2 fleets belonged to different civilizations. The Velthari Dominion was an ancient empire of reptilian beings who believed in genetic purity and strict hierarchy. The Korath Syndicate was a network of insectoid creatures who had replaced most of their bodies with machines and controlled all trade routes in this part of space. These 2 powers had been fighting for longer than human civilization had existed. Not open war anymore, but a constant struggle for influence, territory, and resources. Every other species in the galaxy had been forced to choose a side, and now humanity had appeared right in the middle of it. "We're bugs on a windshield," Marcus told Elena during one of their strategy meetings. "Both sides will want to use us or destroy us." Elena stared at the crude map they had drawn on the wall. 2 great powers, and humanity was a tiny dot between them. "Then we need to become something more than bugs," she said. Dr. Amara Okonkwo, the colony's chief scientist, had been studying the alien transmissions they had captured. "They're both curious about us," she reported. "We're something new, something they don't understand. That scares them, but it also interests them." Before anyone could respond, alarms rang through the camp. A ship was descending from orbit, but it was not Velthari or Korath. This vessel was different, ancient and strange, covered in symbols that seemed to shift and change. The ship landed without a sound. A door opened, and a figure emerged. It looked almost human, but its skin was silver, and its eyes glowed with soft light. When it spoke, its voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "We are the Watching Council," it said. "We have observed this galaxy for longer than either empire knows. We keep the peace between powers that would otherwise destroy everything." Elena stepped forward. "What do you want with us?" The silver figure studied her. Its glowing eyes showed no emotion. "You are the 12th species to emerge in this region. The other 11 were absorbed or destroyed. The Velthari took some, the Korath took others. None survived as they were." "Are you here to help us?" Elena asked. The figure made a sound that might have been laughter. "We do not help. We watch. We balance. But I will tell you this, human. You have entered the game at the worst possible moment." It paused, and something in its voice changed. "Or perhaps the best." Then it turned and walked back to its ship. The vessel rose into the sky and vanished. Elena looked at her people. 12,000 humans on a broken ship, trapped on a frozen moon, caught between two empires that had been fighting since before Egypt built its pyramids. "Well," she said quietly, "I guess we better start figuring out how to survive." Nobody laughed, but for the first time since they landed, Marcus Chen smiled. Humanity had always been good at surviving impossible situations. Maybe, just maybe, they could do it again. The stars above them were cold and distant. Somewhere out there, two great powers were deciding what to do about the strange new species that had appeared in their territory. Humanity's first night in the galaxy had begun, and none of them knew if they would see the morning, but they would face it together. That was all they could do. 6 months had passed since the Meridian crashed on the frozen moon. The colonists had built a small city from the wreckage of their ship. They called it New Providence, a name that held both hope and prayer. Every day they worked to survive. Every night they wondered when the aliens would come for them. The aliens came, but not with weapons. They came with smiles and promises. The Velthari ambassador arrived first. His name was Lord Catherine, and he stood 7 feet tall. His scales were deep green, and his eyes had no pupils, only swirling gold. He walked through New Providence like he owned it, looking at the humans the way a farmer might look at new livestock. "Your species is young and primitive," Catherine said to Elena Vasquez in the meeting hall, "but you have potential. Join the Dominion, and we will lift you up. We will give you technology, resources, and protection. All we ask in return is your loyalty." Elena kept her face calm. "And what would that loyalty require?" Catherine smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Soldiers, workers. We are always in need of both. Your people breed quickly. You would be valuable." The next week, the Korath sent their representative. Her name was Zix-7, and she was deeply unsettling to look at. Her body was mostly metal and wire, with only her compound eyes remaining organic. She clicked and buzzed when she spoke, and small drones orbited around her head. "The Syndicate offers partnership, not servitude," Zix-7 said. "Trade with us. Work with us. Your skills have value and we pay fairly. Join our network and you will never want for anything." "And if we refuse?" Elena asked. Zix-7's drones buzzed louder. "No one refuses the Syndicate. They simply learn the cost of independence." Elena sent delegations to both powers to learn more. Commander Marcus Chen led a team to the Velthari homeworld. What he found there turned his stomach. The Velthari society was built on blood. At the top sat the pure-blooded noble families, their genetics carefully controlled for thousands of years. Below them were the lesser castes, each ranked by how close their DNA matched the ideal. At the bottom were the servant species, aliens who had been conquered long ago and bred for obedience. Marcus watched a Velthari lord execute a servant for walking too slowly. No trial, no questions. Just a flash of light, and a life ended. The other servants did not even look up. They had learned not to. "This is what they want for us," Marcus told his team that night. "We'd be pets at best, slaves at worst." Meanwhile, Dr. Amara Okonkwo traveled to a Korath trade station to study their society. What she found was different but no better. The station was enormous, a city of metal floating in space. Millions of beings from dozens of species lived and worked there. Everything was for sale: food, technology, medicine, pleasure, and people. Amara discovered the truth about Korath economics. Debt was power. The syndicate gave loans freely, knowing that most species could never pay them back. Those who failed became property. They worked in mines and factories until they died, their bodies harvested for parts. "They dress it up in contracts and numbers," Amara reported back to New Providence. "But it's still slavery, just with better accounting." Elena listened to both reports and made her decision. Humanity would not choose a side. They would find their own path. This did not make the powers happy. The attacks began small. A supply ship disappeared. A mining team found their equipment sabotaged. Mysterious illnesses swept through the colony, diseases that human immune systems had never seen before. Then came the assassins. Marcus stopped the first one outside Elena's quarters. The Velthari agent was fast and trained for killing, but Marcus was faster. The second attempt came from the Korath, a microscopic swarm of machines that tried to eat through the colony's water filters. Dr. Amara caught that one by accident, noticing strange readings in her laboratory. "They're testing us," Elena said during an emergency meeting, "seeing how we respond." "They think we're easy targets," Marcus replied. "Primitive species, no allies, no power. They expect us to break." Amara shook her head. "They're wrong. We've been through worse on Earth. Plagues, wars, disasters. We're still here." A young engineer named Jin Soo Park raised his hand. He was only 23 years old, but his mind was sharp as a blade. "Captain, I found something strange in the Meridian's navigation logs." Everyone turned to look at him. Jin Soo connected his tablet to the main display. "Our ship was supposed to exit FTL near Kepler 442b, but we didn't. We came out exactly here in the space between the two fleets. The navigation AI says it was a calculation error, but I checked the math. There was no error." "What are you saying?" Elena asked. "Someone guided us here," Jinsu said. "There's a signal buried in our systems, so old and faint that nobody noticed it. It came from somewhere in the galactic core. It pulled us to this exact spot." The room fell silent. The idea was almost too big to grasp. Humanity hadn't stumbled into this situation by accident. Someone had wanted them here. The silver figure from the Watching Council appeared again that night. It materialized in the colony square, glowing softly in the darkness. "You are learning," it said to Elena. "Faster than the others did." "The other 11 species," Elena said. "You told us they were absorbed or destroyed. Is that what's going to happen to us?" The figure tilted its head. "That depends on you. The Velthari and Korath have fought for 8,000 years. Every new species that emerged was forced to choose. Those who chose were consumed. Those who refused were eliminated. Then how do we survive?" "By being different," the figure said. "By being something neither power can understand or control. The galaxy needs change, human. The question is whether you can be that change without being destroyed first." The figure began to fade, but Jinsu stepped forward. "Wait," he called out. "The signal that brought us here. Where did it come from?" The glowing eyes fixed on the young engineer. For a moment, something like respect flickered in their depths. "From the cradle," the figure said. "The place where all life in this galaxy began. It is forbidden to visit. Those who try do not return." "Why?" "Because some truths are too dangerous to know." The figure vanished completely. Jin Su looked at Elena. His eyes were bright with curiosity and fear. "I need to find that place," he said. Elena studied the young man. Around them, the colony slept, unaware of how their world had just changed. Two great powers wanted to use or destroy them. An ancient mystery waited in the heart of the galaxy, and humanity was running out of time. "Find it," she said, "but be careful. I have a feeling that whatever is waiting for us there, It's been waiting for a very long time. Jinsu nodded and walked into the darkness, his mind already racing with plans. Somewhere out among the stars, the cradle waited, and humanity's true purpose in this galactic game was about to be revealed. 1 year had passed since humanity arrived in the galaxy. New Providence had grown from a desperate camp into a real city. 40,000 humans now called it home. Some had come from accelerated cloning programs. Others arrived on second-wave colony ships from Earth. Word had spread back home about what humanity had found among the stars, and people came anyway. Humans had always been drawn to danger. Governor Elena Vasquez stood on the balcony of her office, watching construction crews build new housing units. She no longer thought of herself as a ship captain. The galaxy had made her something else, a leader, a survivor, and now a player in a game that could destroy her people. "The Velthari delegation is here," her assistant announced. Elena nodded and walked to the conference room. Lord Kethrin waited there with 2 military officers. Their scales gleamed under the artificial lights, and their gold eyes followed her every movement. "Governor Vasquez," Kethrin said, "we come with an offer. The Dominion needs tactical advisors for our upcoming offensive against Korath positions in the Rim territories. Your species has shown surprising skill in strategic thinking. We wish to hire your people." Elena kept her face neutral. "We would be honored to assist the Dominion." Kethrin smiled his sharp smile. He thought he was winning. 3 hours later, Elena met with Zix-7 in the same room. The Korath representative buzzed and clicked as she outlined her own proposal. "Our network has weaknesses," Zix-7 admitted. "The Velthari are trying to infiltrate our communication systems. We need hackers and code breakers. Your engineers have shown talent in these areas. We will pay well for their services." "The Syndicate will have our full support," Elena replied. Zix-7's compound eyes glittered with satisfaction. She thought she was winning too. Neither side knew the truth. Humanity was working for both of them, and betraying both of them at the same time. Marcus Chen ran the operation from a hidden bunker deep beneath New Providence. His team of analysts gathered information from every human consultant working with the powers. Every battle plan the Velthari shared was studied. Every piece of Korath technology was examined. And most importantly, every piece of intelligence was edited before being passed on. "The Velthari are planning to attack Korath Station 7 next month," one of his analysts reported. "Should we warn the Syndicate?" Marcus shook his head. "Tell them it's Station 9 instead. Let them waste resources defending the wrong target." "And the Korath? They think they're hacking Velthari military networks. Actually, they're accessing an old database we built from captured files. Nothing current, nothing useful." It was a dangerous game. If either power discovered what humanity was doing, the response would be swift and brutal. But every day that passed, humans learned more. They copied technology. They mapped territories. They built secret alliances with minor species who were tired of being crushed between the two giants. Dr. Amara Okonkwo led the scientific side of the operation. Her laboratories worked day and night, reverse engineering alien technology and adapting it for human use. Weapons, shields, medical devices, communication systems. Everything the powers had developed over thousands of years, humanity was learning in months. "We're not just catching up," Amara told Elena during one of their late-night meetings. "We're finding new ways to use their technology, things they never thought of." "Because they're stuck in their patterns," Elena said. "They've been fighting the same war for 8,000 years. They can't imagine anything different." "And we can?" Elena looked out the window at the stars. "We have to." Meanwhile, Marcus Chen had assembled a secret team for a mission that no one else knew about. Jinsu Park had finally decoded the signal that had brought humanity to this part of space. It led to a location in the galactic core, a region that both powers called forbidden, the Cradle. Marcus took his best people, soldiers, scientists, and one young engineer who couldn't stop asking questions. They traveled in a small ship using stolen Korath stealth technology to avoid detection. The journey took 3 weeks. What they found changed everything. The Cradle was not a planet. It was a structure, artificial and enormous, floating in the space between stars. Ancient beyond measure, covered in writings that predated both the Velthari and Korath civilizations. Jinsu spent days studying the symbols, and slowly the truth emerged. They were one species, Jinsu said, his voice hushed with awe. The Velthari and Korath. Millions of years ago, they were the same people. Marcus stared at him. That's impossible. They're completely different. Biology, culture, everything. Because they were changed. Jinsu pointed to a wall of ancient text. There was a civil war, a terrible one. The losing side was genetically modified, forced to become something different, something their enemies could hate forever. The winners became the Velthari, the losers became the Korath. Who did this? The progenitors, the original rulers of this galaxy. Jinsu pulled up more images. They didn't just split one species, they programmed hatred into their DNA. Both sides literally cannot stop fighting. It's written into their cells. Marcus felt cold despite his suit's heating system. The Watching Council, are they connected to this? Before Jinsu could answer, Amara Okonkwo's voice came through their communication devices. She had connected to the Cradle's ancient systems, and what she found was even more disturbing. The Council isn't a peacekeeping force, she said. They're not AI either. They're the progenitors themselves, or what's left of them. They uploaded their minds into machines millions of years ago. They've been maintaining this war on purpose. Why? Amara's voice was grim. Because they feed on it. The death, the suffering, the anger. They harvest some kind of psychic energy from the conflict. The war never ends because they don't want it to end. Marcus thought about the silver figure that had visited New Providence, its glowing eyes, its cryptic words. It had been watching them like a farmer watches cattle. There's more, Jinsu said. He had found another section of text, newer than the rest. Someone left a message here. Millions of years ago, some progenitors disagreed with the war. They wanted to stop it, but they couldn't fight their own kind directly. So what did they do? Jinsu looked at Marcus with wonder in his eyes. They seeded life on a distant world, a species without the genetic programming, a species that could choose peace because it wasn't forced to choose war. Marcus understood before Jinsu said the word. Humans. They created humans. Back on New Providence, everything fell apart at once. The Velthari had finally realized that their tactical advisors were feeding them false information. The Korath discovered that their hacked networks were actually decoys. Both powers, united by their rage, made an announcement that echoed across the galaxy. Humanity was now the enemy of everyone. Elena stood in the command center as reports flooded in. Velthari and Korath fleets were moving toward New Providence. For the first time in 8,000 years, the two powers had agreed on something. They're going to destroy us, her assistant whispered. Elena's communication device crackled. Marcus Chen's voice came through from across the galaxy. Governor, we found something that changes everything, but we need time to figure out how to use it. We don't have time, Elena replied. They're coming for us. Then buy us some, Marcus said. Do whatever it takes. We might have a way to end this war forever. Elena looked at her people. Scientists, engineers, soldiers, civilians. 40,000 lives depending on her decisions. Get back here as fast as you can, she told Marcus. We'll hold them off as long as possible. She cut the communication and turned to her officers. The screens showed enemy fleets approaching from every direction. Humanity's gamble had failed. Their clever manipulation had been discovered. Now they would have to fight. Prepare the defenses, Elena ordered. Every weapon, every shield, everything we've built. If they want to destroy us, we're going to make them earn it. The long night was about to begin. The sky above New Providence burned. 3 months of constant bombardment had turned the colony's shields into flickering ghosts. Every night, the people watched fire rain down from orbit. Every morning, they counted who had survived. Governor Elena Vasquez had not slept more than 2 hours at a time since the siege began. Her hair had gone gray at the temples. Her eyes were hollow. But her voice remained strong, and that was what mattered. Status report, she demanded in the command bunker. Outer shields at 12%, her defense chief replied. We've lost sectors 7 through 9. Ground forces are holding at the secondary perimeter, but they're running low on ammunition. Above them, 2 of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy had put aside 8,000 years of hatred for one purpose, to wipe humanity from existence. Velthari warships and Korath battle cruisers hung in orbit like hungry vultures. Their combined armies had landed 3 weeks ago. Every day they pushed closer to the center of the colony. Elena looked at the tactical display. Red markers showed enemy positions surrounding them completely. Blue markers showed her own forces, growing smaller every day. They were going to lose. She knew it. Everyone knew it. But they kept fighting anyway. Marcus Chen had returned from the cradle 2 months ago. His team was working day and night in a hidden laboratory, trying to understand the ancient technology they had found. The progenitors had left tools that could break the genetic programming of both species, tools that could end the war. But understanding alien technology from millions of years ago was not simple. "We need more time," Marcus told Elena during their daily briefing. "Jin Su is close to a breakthrough, but we're still missing something." "How much time?" Marcus hesitated. "Weeks, maybe days if we're lucky." Elena laughed bitterly. "We don't have days. Look outside. They're going to breach the inner wall soon." Marcus grabbed her shoulders. "Then give me those days. You've kept this colony alive for 3 months against impossible odds. Give me a little more time, and I promise you, we can change everything." Elena looked into his eyes. They had known each other for decades, since the first days of planning the Meridian's journey. She trusted him more than anyone alive. "I'll get you your days," she said, "but you better not waste them." She walked to the communication center and broadcast a message to every human in the colony. Her voice echoed through bunkers and trenches, through hospitals and refugee centers. "This is Governor Vasquez. I won't lie to you. We're losing. Our enemies are stronger, older, and they have every advantage. But I want you to remember something. They've been fighting each other for 8,000 years. They've conquered dozens of species. They think they know everything about war." She paused and let her words sink in. "They don't know us. They don't understand that humans don't surrender. We don't give up. We've survived ice ages and plagues and world wars. We've come back from the edge of extinction more times than any other species in history, and we're going to do it again." Across the colony, people listened. Soldiers reloaded their weapons. Engineers repaired damaged equipment. Parents held their children and found strength they didn't know they had. "Hold the line," Lena finished. "Just a little longer. Help is coming." She didn't mention that the help was a theoretical solution hidden in ancient alien ruins. Sometimes hope was more important than truth. The next week was the worst of the siege. Velthari shock troops broke through the eastern wall. Korath war machines rolled through the industrial district. Street by street, building by building, humans fought for every inch of ground. Dr. Amara Okonkwo worked in the hidden laboratory while explosions shook the walls. Her consciousness was connected to the cradle's systems through a device Jin Su had built. She could feel the ancient intelligence waiting there, patient and vast. "You're the ones who created us," she said to the emptiness. "You wanted a species that could end the war. How do we do it?" The response came not in words but in images. Memories of a galaxy before the war. Memories of one people, united and peaceful. Memories of the terrible moment when pride and anger split them apart. "The programming is deep," the intelligence explained. "It's written into their genes, their brain chemistry, their very souls. They cannot stop hating each other because they were designed to hate. But it can be broken? Yes, with the right signal broadcast widely enough. The false memories will crumble. They will remember what they truly are." Jinsu looked up from his console. "I can build that signal, but broadcasting it across the galaxy would require an enormous amount of power, more than anything we have." Amara felt something stir in the depths of the cradle's network. "There's a way, but it requires a permanent connection to the system. Someone would have to merge with the cradle completely. Body, mind, and soul." Jinsu stared at her. "You mean sacrifice yourself?" "I mean become something new." Amara's voice was calm. "I wouldn't die, but I wouldn't be human anymore either." Before anyone could respond, alarms screamed through the laboratory. Marcus rushed in, covered in dust and blood. "The Watching Council is here," he said. "They've sent their flagship. It's bigger than anything we've ever seen." Elena joined them in the observation room. Above New Providence, a new ship had appeared. It dwarfed the Velthari and Korath vessels. Its surface was smooth and silver, covered in symbols that hurt to look at. This was the true power behind the galactic conflict. The progenitors themselves come to silence humanity forever. They know what we found, Amara said. They're afraid. Good, Elena replied. That means we're on the right track. The council broadcast a message that every human could hear. The voice was the same one that had visited them on their first night, but now it held no pretense of neutrality. You have meddled in matters beyond your understanding. The order of this galaxy has been maintained for millions of years. You will not disrupt it. Surrender now and we will grant you a quick end. Resist and we will make your extinction last for centuries. Elena grabbed the microphone. This is Governor Elena Vasquez of humanity. You made us. You designed us to be free from your programming. And now you're afraid of what that means? Well, you should be. Because we're not going to surrender. We're going to break your chains and free every species you've enslaved. She cut the communication before they could respond. Marcus, she said, take every soldier we have left and hit their ground forces. Full assault. Every gun, every vehicle, every person who can fight. That's suicide, Marcus said. It's a distraction. Keep them busy while Jin Su finishes the signal. Marcus nodded slowly. He understood. This was the end, one way or another. It's been an honor, Governor. The honor is mine, Commander. Marcus gathered his forces and launched the final assault. Humans poured out of their bunkers and into the streets, screaming defiance at enemies that outnumbered them 100 to 1. They fought with guns and knives and bare fists. They died in their thousands. But they did not stop. Jin Su worked frantically, his fingers flying across alien controls. The signal was almost ready, but the power requirements were beyond anything he could generate. Amara made her decision. She connected herself fully to the cradle's network. Her body slumped in its chair, but her consciousness expanded into something vast and strange. She could feel the entire galaxy, billions of minds connected by invisible threads of hate and fear. Jin Su, her voice echoed from 1,000 speakers. I can provide the power. Broadcast the signal. Now. Jin Su looked at her empty eyes and understood what she had done. Tears ran down his face, but his hands were steady as he activated the transmission. The signal exploded outward from New Providence, carried by every satellite and transmitter Amara could reach. It spread across the galaxy at the speed of light, touching every Velthari and every Korath. And everywhere it touched, soldiers stopped fighting. Weapons fell from clawed hands and metal fingers. Eyes that had known nothing but hatred suddenly filled with confusion, then recognition, then impossible, overwhelming grief. They remembered. They remembered being one people. They remembered the lies that had been programmed into their souls. They remembered what they had lost. Above New Providence, the Council's flagship powered its weapons. The progenitors would not let their creation escape so easily. If they couldn't control the galaxy, they would destroy it. But they had forgotten something important about humans. Marcus Chen was still alive, and he had one more mission to complete. Governor, he transmitted from his burning ship, I'm going to ram their flagship. It won't destroy them, but it might buy you enough time. Elena's voice came back, broken with static and grief. Marcus, no. There has to be another way. There isn't, but that's okay. Marcus smiled as he aimed his ship at the silver behemoth. Humanity doesn't need me anymore. They need what we've started here. Take care of them, Elena. Finish what we began. The small human ship struck the Council flagship at full speed. The explosion lit up the sky above New Providence brighter than any sun. And in the chaos that followed, the ancient progenitors retreated. Their control was broken. Their war was ending. For the first time in millions of years, they were afraid. They fled into dark space, and they did not look back. On the surface of New Providence, humans emerged from their bunkers. Around them, Velthari and Korath soldiers stood in shock, their weapons forgotten. Some were crying. Others simply stood in silence, staring at beings they had hated all their lives and finally seeing them clearly. Elena watched the sunrise through tears. Half her people were dead. Marcus was gone. Amara was something else now, distributed across a network of machines. But they had won. Against all odds, against all reason, humanity had won. The longest night was over, and morning had finally come. 5 years had passed since the night the galaxy changed. The scars were still visible on New Providence. Craters marked where bombs had fallen. Memorials stood on every street corner, listing names of the fallen. Nearly half of humanity's population in this part of space had died during the siege. They had paid for their freedom in blood, but life had returned to the colony. Children played in parks built over battlefields. Markets sold goods from 100 worlds. Ships from dozens of species landed at the rebuilt spaceport every day. What had once been a desperate outpost was now a symbol of hope for the entire galaxy. Governor Elena Vasquez stood at the window of her office, watching a group of Velthari and Korath walking together through the streets below. They moved carefully around each other, their ancient instincts still fighting against their new understanding. But they were trying. Every day they tried a little harder. A knock came at her door. Jinsu Park entered, looking older than his 28 years. The weight of what he had accomplished and what it had cost sat heavy on his shoulders. "The transport is ready, Governor. The assembly is waiting." Elena nodded and straightened her formal jacket. Today was the most important day in human history since the night of the signal. Today she would address the first Galactic Assembly, a council representing every species in the known universe. The transport carried her to the space station where the assembly met. It was neutral territory, built in the months after the war ended. Representatives from hundreds of worlds gathered in the Great Hall, beings of every shape and size and color. At the center of the room, a raised platform waited for speakers. Elena climbed the platform and looked out at the crowd. She saw Veltari nobles who had once wanted to enslave her people. She saw Korath traders who had tried to buy them. She saw members of the 11 species that had been absorbed over the millennia, now free for the first time. And she saw humans, her own people, scattered throughout the crowd as equals among the stars. 5 years ago, Elena began, humanity was nothing. We were 12,000 refugees on a broken ship, crashed on a frozen moon. The great powers of this galaxy saw us as insects, as pawns, as expendable pieces in a game we didn't understand. The hall was silent. Every being listened. We had no technology, no allies, no weapons. All we had was each other, and something the rest of you had forgotten, the ability to choose our own future. She paused, letting her words echo through the chamber. For 8,000 years, the Velthari and Korath were enemies. Not because of anything they did, not because of ideology or resources or territory. They were enemies because they were programmed to be enemies. The progenitors who created this galaxy civilization split one species into two and poisoned them with eternal hatred. They maintained that hatred for millions of years, feeding on its energy, growing fat on suffering and death. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Even now, the truth was hard to hear. Humanity broke that cycle, not because we're smarter or stronger or better than anyone else. We broke it because we were different. We could see what you couldn't see. We could imagine what you couldn't imagine. A galaxy without war. A future where former enemies become friends. Elena gestured to the Velthari and Korath representatives sitting near each other. Look at them. 5 years ago, they would have died before sharing a room. Now they serve together on this council. They're learning to trust each other, to work together, to build something new. The Velthari representative, a female named Lady Thesara, rose from her seat. She was young by her species standards, born after the old programming began to fade. Her voice was clear and strong. What the humans say is true. My people committed terrible crimes throughout our history. We enslaved species. We destroyed cultures. We believed we were superior because that is what we were created to believe. But we are not prisoners of our past anymore. We choose to be better. The Korath representative, a partially organic being called Unit 12, added their voice. The syndicate built its power on debt and exploitation. We treated other species as resources to be harvested. This was our nature, engineered into our very cells. But nature can be overcome. Choice is stronger than programming. The humans taught us that. Elena smiled at both of them. The road ahead will be long. The watching council is still out there, somewhere in dark space. They're wounded, but they're not destroyed. One day they'll come back. They'll try to reclaim their control over this galaxy. She stood taller, and her voice filled the hall. When they do, they'll find something different. Not a galaxy divided against itself. Not species programmed to hate and kill. They'll find the Galactic Assembly, united, prepared, and absolutely unwilling to surrender our freedom. Applause erupted from hundreds of throats, mandibles, and speaker systems. Species that had never spoken to each other roared their approval together. After the speech, Elena found a quiet corner of the station. She was exhausted. These public appearances drained her more than any battle ever had. A familiar presence approached, glowing softly in the dim light. "You did well," said the voice of Amara Okonkwo. Elena turned to face the holographic projection. Amara no longer had a physical body. Her consciousness was distributed across a network of satellites and computers spanning multiple star systems, but her smile was the same, warm and kind. "I still miss you," Elena said. "The old you." "I'm still me," Amara replied. "Just more of me. And less in some ways. It's complicated. Is it worth it? What you sacrificed?" Amara's projection flickered, and for a moment, Elena could see stars moving behind her eyes. "Look at what we built, Elena. 100 species working together. Wars ending across the galaxy. Children growing up without the hatred their parents knew. Is it worth losing one body to save billions of lives?" She smiled. "I think so." Elena wiped her eyes. "I'm getting too old for this. We need new leaders. Younger ones." "Jin Su will take over when you're ready," Amara said. "He's already become a symbol for the next generation. The young engineer who helped save the galaxy. The stories will grow around him. He hates that. I know. That's why he'll be good at it. He won't let the power go to his head." They sat together in comfortable silence. Through the station's windows, they could see ships coming and going from every corner of the galaxy. Trade vessels, diplomatic transports, exploration craft heading toward unknown regions. The universe was opening up, and humanity was helping to lead the way. "There's something I need to tell you," Amara said finally. "I detected a signal this morning from dark space." Elena felt her heart freeze. "The Council?" "Yes, they're still alive, still watching." The message was simple. "We will return." Elena thought about all the work that had been done, all the alliances built, the wounds healed, the futures created. Could it survive another confrontation with the beings who had ruled this galaxy for millions of years? "Let them come," she said. "When they arrive, they'll find us ready." Amara's projection reached out and touched Elena's hand. It wasn't real, just light and energy, but somehow it was comforting anyway. "Do you remember what the Council called us? Dark horses, unknown players who upset the game." Elena nodded. "I remember. They were right in a way. We came from nowhere. We had nothing, and we changed everything." Amara's eyes sparkled with something like mischief. "The next time they face us, we won't be dark horses anymore. We'll be the new guardians of this galaxy, and we'll have 8,000 years of freed civilizations standing with us." Elena looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, ancient enemies were plotting their return. Somewhere out there, new threats were waiting to be discovered. The universe was vast and dangerous and full of surprises. But so were humans. They had wandered into a galactic power struggle as nobodies. They had been underestimated, dismissed, and nearly destroyed. But they had survived. They had won. And now they were building something the galaxy had never seen before. A future where every species was free. Dark horses no more. Now they were just family. Elena smiled and walked back toward the assembly hall. There was work to do, alliances to strengthen, and a galaxy to protect. The journey was far from over, but for the first time in a long time, she was looking forward to tomorrow. The stars were waiting, and humanity would meet them together.